Hello and welcome to the latest PSG Talking podcast. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show, we're talking all about Paris Saint-Germain's 1-1 draw against Dortmund that ended up being just enough to see them through to the round of 16 of the Champions League. Here to help me do that, we have Jonathan Johnson from CBS Sports. How are things on your end? Has your heart rate finally come down like mine?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always look forward to these appearances. And yeah, it was very much a white knuckle ride for all of us, I think. And to be honest, not just regarding Dortmund PSG, but sort of regarding Group F as a whole. I think they had us all on tenterhooks, and obviously with this being the final edition of the Champions League with the group stages as we've known it, I think it was a fitting way for that format to bow out, and luckily, PSG on the right end of that.
Yeah, on the right end of that, and oh my goodness, I mean, during that match, PSG were all the way down in third for a stretch of time, and then they got back up to second. I mean, you were bouncing back and forth between the two games. I guess that's why we love the Champions League, but maybe we like it when it's not our team involved, because like I said, I looked at my watch and my heart rate was like 123 or something. I mean, it was thrilling stuff, but let's just dive right into it. Very simply, Jonathan, what did you think of PSG's performance on the night? What did you like? What didn't you like?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that question. I mean, sort of what I liked. I mean, what I liked is sort of what I've liked in a lot of PSG's games where they've done well but haven't necessarily gotten the result. They create chances. You just kind of finish that. You just kind of feel that. Sorry, if the players sort of were a bit sharper in front of goal, they probably would be able to easily get the victory against the likes of. Certainly Newcastle at home in the penultimate game and Dortmund away. So it just feels like a continuation of that, where sort of PSG are kind of like working to fine tune, the attack, find that right combination that works best. There were some good moments for Kolo Muani and some not so good moments. Same for Mbappe, same for Barcola. It just feels though that should some of the players take one or two of the opportunities that they had, and there were so many. I mean, even just in the first half for PSG, some of these games could have been won a lot more easily. Win at home to Newcastle and pretty much progress is assured. But obviously, we know that PSG made hard work of it, and I think that aspect of it is a bit frustrating. The big worry, and I don't think anyone would really disagree, is the defense. It hasn't looked right for some time now. Not good as well. That there's going to be no obvious change in terms of personnel anytime soon, with Kimpembe and Nuno Mendes still no closer to returning to full fitness. So it's, I do think that is a worry ahead of the round of 16. But overall, I think I'm actually quite optimistic for PSG ahead of the knockout stage of the Champions League. I've been saying this for a while now, and I said it at the beginning of this year that my prediction for PSG was that the group stage performance would not necessarily be as convincing as it has been in the past, but PSG would probably be that team that people think is a good draw when the round of 16 draw is made next week, and then sort of by the time February rolls around, they're a bit less sure about their opinion. Basically, with the shoe being on the other foot, PSG normally draws someone. You feel like it's the right time for PSG to come up against that team, whether it's Manchester United, whether it's Real Madrid, whether it's Bayern Munich, and then suddenly, just 2 weeks, 10 days before the game, that team seems to have roared back into form, and suddenly it's not such a great time to come up against them. So I feel like PSG could be that team that, people maybe write off a little too prematurely, but there is still a lot of work to be done between now and sort of the round of 16 first leg. So back to the not the drawing board, but back to the training pitch for Luis Enrique and the players, because obviously things have improved in Ligue 1, but they do need to work on certainly sharper finishing, taking those opportunities, because they will get punished if they're as wasteful as they have been in some of the group stage games come the knockout phase.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those teams that PSG could potentially draw. Arsenal. And Arsenal fans, I know you're listening. I see it on Twitter. You all are saying you want PSG. Be careful what you wish for here, because I think, like you said, PSG are definitely a team that I don't think a lot of those first place finishers are going to want to see. It's not really the reward that you would think it is. And you also mentioned some of those missed opportunities. At Chris X Munn on Twitter, he said PSG's XG for the entire group stage, PSG 13.3, opponents were 6. You have to wonder if some of those goals start to actually go in and the floodgates open, PSG could absolutely be a dangerous team. JJ, you wrote a piece for us on PSG Talk Extra Time over on Substack about Gianluigi Donnarumma's errors of late and whether PSG might be regretting that signing, maybe time to move on to Arnaud Tenes or maybe get someone else new. I thought that he had a really good game last night. He made a bunch of key saves. Curious to get your thoughts on his performance, and do you think PSG should go after Mike Maignan over at Milan or another goalkeeper in the summer? What do you think?
Look, I'm going to be totally clear about it. Donnarumma had a good game in Dortmund. There's no denying that. But it again, sort of going back to that article that I wrote recently, it played to his strengths. We've never questioned whether he's able to pull off reflex saves and sort of actually block the ball. That's always been one of his strong suits. The weaknesses come when the ball is played back to him. And it was interesting, actually, that the teams seemed to play fewer passes back to him or fewer potentially dangerous passes, back to him, which, kind of cut out some of the potential risk factor in terms of a self-inflicted, conceded goal. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough because PSG did still get caught, dawdling on the ball at the back line. But there's no way that you can really blame Donnarumma for that. I do think that he still palms the ball out a little bit too much when he makes saves that he possibly could hold on to. But overall, no major criticism of his performance in Dortmund. But it's funny, we're talking about Maignan. Maignan actually, I'm sure most PSG fans are aware of it now, but he actually played a crucial role for PSG in this result, because if he doesn't make that phenomenal save in the second half when it's 1-1 between Newcastle and Milan, perhaps Newcastle go on and win it. And, had they done so, they would have finished above PSG. So Maignan, still, a Milan player, but also, really doing PSG a solid.
PSG legend.
Well, he could be one day. I do think it would be great to see him come back to Parc des Princes and actually play, because I don't think from memory that he made a senior appearance, but in any case, that's off the top of my head, and we'll see if that ever, sort of does become a possibility. But, I think Donnarumma has been given long enough to really, make a strong case for himself to be sort of beyond any, criticism. And, unfortunately, he hasn't done it. But he is the number one at this moment in time, and had a very good game in Dortmund. So no undue criticism on this end.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy that the last time we saw him out on the pitch for PSG, he was kicking a guy in the head. He certainly showed up in Dortmund in that atmosphere. So good performance from him. All right, let's kind of dissect some of the moments of this match. So PSG, they go down a goal. Newcastle then took the lead. I mentioned earlier, PSG then fell to third. They were looking Europa League right in the eyes. At that point, did you think it was all over? Did you have any confidence PSG could pull this off? Because in years past, we've all seen it. PSG go down a goal, then the mistakes start happening, then the red cards start happening, and it seems like all the players just lose their mind. No matter who's out there for PSG, year after year, the same things happen. So when everything looked like it was going against PSG, did you still have faith that they could pull this off?
I mean, I still had faith that PSG would continue to create chances, which they did. I mean, it has a different type of impact on PSG now when they concede a goal. It's quite interesting to see, because the team reacts as a team should, sort of, really frustrated, determined to set things right. It's not the kind of deflating effect that you used to see when PSG would concede a goal. And I think that's a big improvement, because it was that sort of deflating period, that would often kill PSG in games, when, they used to have the likes of Neymar, Messi, Verratti, when those guys' heads were dropped, they would rarely, get them back up. But this PSG, there's a bit more about them. They don't have that same sort of experience of some of the past failures that have haunted PSG and haunted certainly some of the players individually. So I think that based on the way that PSG were performing, it was inevitable that they would create other chances, and just great that they managed to take one, and fantastic for Zaire-Emery as well, returning from injury to be the guy, the main man, stepping up and being the hero. Obviously, Mbappe had a goal chalked off for a very marginal offside as well, which was a shame. But there were a number of chances that PSG created. True, they also conceded a few opportunities, but that's part and parcel of the way that Luis Enrique sets his teams up. I think many people questioned, why Ugarte was left out of the starting 11, but saw sort of with his introduction during the second half, sort of what the overarching kind of strategy and thinking behind that was from Luis Enrique. And I don't think anyone can really argue with the performance PSG put in terms of creating enough chances to win the game. Again, it just comes back to that question of finishing and needing to be a little sharper, in front of goal and in those key moments. But you could argue that, had the ball bounced slightly differently, Mbappe scores, Süle doesn't make that fantastic goal line block. Barcola, if it's a couple of almost centimeters really closer to the more central part of the goal, it goes in, doesn't hit the post. Kolo Muani, if he puts a little bit more power on that poke, probably puts it in the back of the net, and that's just three potential goals that could have been scored in the first half. So, I think there's certainly enough, character that PSG show when they concede goals. It's just frustrating that this sort of iteration of PSG under Luis Enrique have this nasty habit of finding themselves in very awkward defensive situations, and often it comes when the ball is at the feet of either a defender or Donnarumma. It's sort of that back five area, playing around with the ball at their feet, and none of them really seem truly comfortable. Okay, we know, Hakimi is much more comfortable further up the pitch when he's bombing forward, and has been massively decisive for PSG so far this season in that respect. But sort of defensively, he was caught dawdling, and PSG nearly paid the price for that. Marquinhos still not really getting to grips with being captain, if I'm brutally honest, and sort of organising the team. You would have thought years alongside Thiago Silva, would have taught him, how it's done at the very highest level, but it doesn't seem like it's, rubbed off on him or had the desired effect. Skriniar still taking a long, long time to really find the kind of form the PSG would have expected from him. I know that he was coming off of a very difficult injury to recover from, but he's, it still feels very clunky, that central defensive setup, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And Lucas Hernandez, to be honest, I think if I was to pick a defender who I feel most satisfied with so far this season, I actually think that he's bedded in really well. I think he's a really solid option at left back. We haven't seen too much of him in central defence because there isn't the depth at left back at this moment in time to move him anywhere else. But I like his commitment on the field, his attitude. Listening to him in press conferences as well. His sort of commitment, his professionalism. Obviously things didn't get off to an ideal start with the fans taking exception to the fact that he comes from Marseille and grew up supporting OM. But I think he's proved very quickly that he's here to do a job well, and his consistency has been very welcome so far. But that doesn't unfortunately take away from the fact that the back four as a whole has just not really been that convincing so far. So I do think that PSG really need to consider potentially bringing in an extra body in the January transfer window, especially with Kimpembe and Mendes not even certain to sort of be ready for, say, February, when we're sort of coming up on the round of 16 and the resumption of play in the Champions League. Whether it's a loan deal, whether it's looking to find potentially a good opportunity for, to bring in a player for the future. I've written about, PSG's interest in Lille's Lenny Yoro as well. But I really feel like it, unless Luis Enrique can sort of help to work with the defence to cut out some of those mistakes that really don't need to be made, it feels like PSG are just sort of waiting to shoot themselves in the foot no matter how many chances they create going forward.
Yeah, we're going to ask you about PSG's January transfer window here in just a bit, but definitely agree. Everything you said about the defense is always looking shaky. I don't know why we try to play out from the back. It just always seems to turn into a bit of a mess and ultimately put Donnarumma under some pressure. You mentioned Mbappe was called offside. It looked like his kneecap was just off, and just in general, I just think like, the game is set up so we're giving penalties and ultimately goals for when a ball hits a player's chest and then hits their arm. But if a kneecap is, centimeters offside, we call back a goal. Something doesn't seem right about that. I don't know. Maybe the rules, people higher up in the game can take a look at that, but that just seems like we're ruining maybe the most exciting part of the game. But you mentioned Warren Zaire-Emery. He scored PSG's only goal. Talk about his performance. You mentioned, it was a pretty nasty ankle injury he had. We weren't expecting him back until after the winter break. He comes in, and it looks like he doesn't miss a step. He gets man of the match. So just talk about his performance, and then ultimately, you mentioned Marquinhos isn't feeling comfortable as captain. Could you see a PSG with Zaire-Emery as captain perhaps as early as next season?
I mean, as early as next season, perhaps not. But I think as long as Zaire-Emery continues, on this current trajectory and is mature as he has been so far since stepping in for PSG at senior level, why not? He certainly has the early credentials. Obviously, he's had a taste of leadership as well at under 21 level. And I think he would be sort of the right kind of candidate as well for this sort of new look PSG that has more of a French feel and sort of more of a Parisian feel to it. So, certainly I think he's a candidate for the future, but as early as next year, I'm not sure that putting that much sort of expectation and burden on him this early in his career would be wise, especially at a club like PSG where the expectation is sky high. But then, depending on what happens this season, maybe those expectations finally sort of level out, and sort of a bit more realism enables, PSG to make a decision and build for the future with somebody like Zaire-Emery, if not in the captain's role, then at least in sort of a fairly high up leadership role. But I think it was fantastic to see him get back to first team action after that injury that he picked up on France international duty. Felt really unfortunate and like it was going to clip his progression just at a pivotal moment. But he's bounced back a lot faster than PSG medical staff expected. Perhaps they were a little too hasty in writing him off, but at that time, they had enough depth, and they had time on their side in terms of letting him rest up and recover properly before returning to action. And then, of course, that injury to Fabian Ruiz, I think really sort of expedited his return. But, the fact that he was able to sort of shake off what could have been quite a niggly injury, quite quickly, has been really impressive and, fantastic for him to basically not drop a beat, as you said, and, put in the kind of performance that he did in Dortmund, because it's a very difficult place to go. It can be a very daunting atmosphere, and he made it look easy, as he has done so many times this season. So really exciting to have Zaire-Emery in this kind of form again, despite the injury, and looking very much the part in PSG's midfield. So while things are going sort of as well as they are, you don't sort of want to risk breaking up that momentum. But I do think sort of longer term, that there are big question marks about PSG's captaincy, and whether it really makes sense to sort of persevere with Marquinhos in that position. I did see a lot of logic in Kylian Mbappe taking over that mantle, but equally, sort of given the way that everything went sort of from the end of last season over the summer coming into this one, there wasn't really much choice for Luis Enrique, but to sort of, leave it to the players to re-elect, Marquinhos as the skipper. So, long term, I certainly think that Zaire-Emery is starting to assert his credentials, but perhaps it makes sense to sort of ease him into that a little bit more. And I don't know, maybe next season look at, possibly, promoting him into sort of maybe a vice captaincy or sort of one of the sort of the third captain, something like that, so that he does get a taste of it every now and then. Because I think as long as PSG handle his development, both technically and mentally, as they have been doing so far, and don't sort of put too much burden on his shoulders. I think there's no doubt that it's just a question of time before he is really truly the leader of this PSG side.
Yeah, fantastic player. And there was a lot of moaning from the Newcastle supporters and a lot in the media about all the injuries that Newcastle had as an excuse for finishing dead last in the group. But let's not forget at that home match against Newcastle, PSG didn't have Zaire-Emery due to injury, and he's such an important part of PSG's midfield. And it's crazy to say at 17, but he really is that important for PSG and what they're trying to do. Um, let's look at the end of the match because there's a little bit of controversy with the way PSG wrapped up this match. It was 1-1. I guess word got through that Milan were in the lead over Newcastle, and so Luis Enrique sort of directed the team to, okay, let's just stay calm, let's not get forward too much, let's just see this match out when we're through. There was a video I saw on social media of Mbappe looking clearly annoyed. There was other reports. I think RMC had it. They said he was disappointed. He wanted to go for the win and top the group. Do you think? What is your opinion? Do you think PSG should have pushed forward and get that goal that could have seen them top the group?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think that PSG could have pushed forward much more than they did over the whole game. I mean, yeah, sure, Luis Enrique kind of put the handbrake on in sort of like the last 5 to 10 minutes, but PSG spent 80 minutes of that game, basically trying to go for the jugular. And I think really, if Mbappe is frustrated about the approach, he should probably feel frustrated with himself for maybe not taking the chance that he had, which was blocked by Zuda. I do feel he was unlucky with the offside. It is sort of fractions really. That was judged by. But PSG were on the right side of one of those calls just 2 weeks ago at home to Newcastle. So those are the breaks. Sometimes it goes for you, sometimes it goes against you. But I think to sort of suggest that PSG were not attack minded enough going into this game is probably far from the point, really. I think that Luis Enrique set the team up to be attacking. They did attack. They had the chances. They created more than enough. They just didn't score. And at the end of the day, the responsibility to put the ball in the back of the net falls to, in this case, the front three from that game. And that was Mbappe himself, Koromani, and Barcola. So, I think perhaps if you have a Gonzalo Ramos on the pitch, maybe he makes a difference. Obviously, he was ill, so he wasn't there in Germany with the rest of the squad. But, PSG have more than enough attacking talent, on the roster. Had the likes of Asensio on the bench as well. There was more than enough firepower for PSG to have gotten a second goal with the chances created. So, no, I don't think it was really a question of approach. And I completely understand why Luis Enrique, given sort of the up and down nature of the group, especially sort of heading into the last 15 minutes or so, opted to sort of put the handbrake on, sent on Ugarte, who dished out a few equalising challenges, and ultimately it's worked out in his favour. Didn't quite win in the way that he was confidently announced PSG would in the pre-match press conference, but overall, he's succeeded in taking PSG into the knockout stage of the Champions League so far, and PSG are top of Ligue 1. So. There's not really that much that Enrique can be criticised for at this moment in time. And it's, when you're watching the team as well, there is tangible progress. PSG, if they created that many chances against Bayern in one of the games or even over the two legs, they would have had a much better chance of going through. They were not that creative last season, despite having some of the bigger star names and greater star power in the starting 11. So I think the approach was fine. Maybe a little, not going to say suicidal, but a little too sort of heavy on the attacking emphasis. But it's almost like it needs sort of the attacking emphasis to be turned up in order for PSG to get the goals that they need to win these games. And that's perhaps sort of looking back on it now, what Enrique felt in the Newcastle game, because as much as we know that the Newcastle game was a thrashing, PSG also created quite a few opportunities in that game. Dembele had one or two just himself, and there were a couple of other openings that were created as well. So, it's. I mean, there's a lot sort of for PSG to take out of this group stage showing, but I don't think it should necessarily result in a maybe more defensive minded approach. Just I guess maybe more pragmatic from Luis Enrique is what he might need to consider.
Yeah, I think in this situation, it's really easy to be critical of Luis Enrique. Think about if he does push forward and, sends Donnarumma up there for a corner kick or something and PSG let one in, then we're all being critical. Why didn't you play defensively? Why didn't you, come back a little bit, and just see this match out? So very easy to be critical of Luis Enrique. And you're right. Mbappe, everyone's seen the screenshot and the text is, Mbappe missed this opportunity. I mean, you got to score that goal. You absolutely do. And credit to Asula, who made an incredible sliding save of the group stage, I think. Um, let's look ahead a little bit here, Jonathan. Who do you think is the best matchup for PSG in the round of 16? Not who you hope or maybe is the most attractive, but like stylistically, who do you think PSG matches up best against and have the best opportunity to advance past?
I mean, it's a really good question. I'm slightly biased. I would really like to see PSG get Real Sociedad because I would like to go to back to San Sebastian. It's a fantastic place, and I think it's a really, really good away day. But actually, in terms of the best matchup, I actually think that a team like an Atletico Madrid, especially this new Atleti that's quite attack minded, I think that could be a really interesting matchup. Obviously, Luis Enrique, Diego Simeone know each other well from their time coaching against each other, and I think it would be a really entertaining game. Don't think it would be too difficult for PSG away from home as it would do maybe in some of the other potential matchups. And also, I think as well, just being completely biased, we want a bit of variety, right? We don't want to get the same teams that PSG have been drawn against a few times in the past. So, no Bayern, no Real, no City. We've seen those, draws a couple of times in recent years. So, I think Atleti would be quite refreshing because it's a big, prestigious tie against a very good club in good form. One that will be a test, but also not one that necessarily will feel too impossible to PSG if that's what comes out of the hat on Monday.
Would you agree that probably City is the worst potential matchup in terms of style and maybe followed by Real Madrid?
I mean, I don't really agree with sort of a worst possible draw because at the end of the day, all of these teams are very good and they're in the knockout phase because they deserve to be there. It's just I think that at the end of the day, some of these bigger names are going to look more daunting. But equally at the same time, PSG, like I said, I felt like they're going to be the team that a lot of people maybe sleep on and think is an easy draw, and then will be a completely different beast. Come February. So I think Atleti would be an interesting one. I mean, Barcelona, first time in a while that's happened. Maybe that could also be quite a fun one. But as much as Barca, have got a lot of new players in, they're not quite at the same level as a Real, a Bayern, or a City, in my opinion. So, maybe a Barca or Arsenal could be interesting as well. I just feel that Atleti is probably the best matchup. If I was going to say that there was a worse draw, to be honest, it would probably be somebody like a Bayern, given the knowledge that Thomas Tuchel sort of has of PSG and sort of that certainly that mental capitulation that the team is prone to. So actually, I'd probably say Bayern is maybe the worst possible draw for PSG.
And that's just great because according to those who crunch the numbers, PSG have the highest percentage to draw Bayern Munich at 17.3%. Sociedad is down at 13.59. In fact, all the Spanish clubs are at 13.59% chance for PSG to draw them. City is the second most likely at 14.75. So, yeah. And plus, sacking Tuchel right before Christmas, I'm sure he won't have any extra motivation to knock PSG out of the round of 16. So hopefully we don't see them. But yeah, it'll probably be a big club. If you're a longtime PSG supporter, we don't ever get a favorable draw in the round of 16. So buckle up. Should be fun. Jonathan, we'll get you out with just a couple questions here, just getting away from the Dortmund match. And I want to talk about the January transfer window and maybe some business that might get done. First, if PSG end up sending Sharon Dor out and Ethan Mbappe out on loan, are there clubs that you think would be ideal for their development? Where would you like to see them go? Maybe stay in Ligue 1 or go elsewhere? What do you think about those two?
I mean, we've seen from loan moves in the past that it doesn't really work out when PSG loan, somebody to a league outside. They don't necessarily play enough, especially when it's come in sort of like the mid-season, period. It's very difficult to bed them in properly and for them to have a real impact. So, I mean, for me, I think that if either of those two, for example, were to go out on loan, it feels better that they might drop into Ligue 2, maybe go to a club that's, potentially, in the mix to get promoted or is looking to, for an uptick in form. Possibly one that's just appointed a new coach so that all the players start at the same place, including anyone who might come in the January window. Just feels like sometimes the moves to a Ligue 1 club are, the stakes are almost too high, because if they go to a Ligue 1 club that's battling against the drop, generally the more experienced players will get the nod in those kind of situations. Less sort of, perhaps one of those teams that's unexpectedly faring well, was to be open to potentially, taking one of PSG's talents on loan. I'm thinking the likes of Brest, for example, who obviously have been excellent so far this season, and a real surprise package up there in fifth. Maybe a Reims, but it's difficult to see any sort of obvious immediate fit in Ligue 1. And personally, I think it would be better to look towards Ligue 2, or maybe even a Belgium, where it's not that drastic a cultural change.
And then just kind of zooming out a little bit, what do you think PSG might do in January? I think a lot of supporters, and it sounds like you as well, the defense needs to be addressed, but we know how difficult the January transfer window can be. Is a player like Varane on the table for Manchester United? I mean, are there a couple names out there defensively that you think would be realistic signings that they could make in January?
I mean, I think there's a number of players out there who they could go in for. Whether or not they're available, whether or not they want to sort of make the move is another question. Varane, I like aspects of it. I don't like other aspects of it. We know that Varane has already had to retire at international level because of some of the physical issues that he's had. He's not getting any younger either, but equally, he is vastly experienced, and he is a top quality defender when he is fit. Obviously, financially, there'd be that consideration as well. Bayern Munich have been linked with him too. So clearly, his stock hasn't fallen that much. With Manchester United going out of Europe, potentially there is a deal there that can be struck. But also depends on how sort of forward-thinking PSG want to be. I don't personally see the point of acquiring a player in the January transfer window and agreeing to let them stay at their club on loan. So if that's sort of what PSG have in mind for somebody like Lenny Euro, I think the only sort of scenario where that's acceptable really is if PSG absolutely have to make the move in January in order to beat off competition for his signature. But yeah, I mean, I think PSG will have to look at sort of the opportunities that present themselves sort of between now and the opening of the transfer window, and try to get that business done as quickly as possible so that they get maximum amount of time to work on the chemistry and potentially be ready for the resumption of Champions League play. Because let's not forget, it's going to be a busy start to the year as well. You've got the Trophée des Champions, which will be played in Paris against Toulouse in very early January. You've got the Coupe de France, so there's going to be a couple of tricky games there. It's there's a lot for PSG to consider, but I do think that a defender, certainly a left-footed defender, has to be sort of the priority, because ideally it would be one who can potentially step in and relieve Hernandez from time to time as well. But it's a question of the opportunities available on the market for PSG, and if it was to be a French player, I think it would be a good fit as well with the way that the squad has been developed since the summer transfer window.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think advancing to the next round certainly puts a lot of pressure on Campos and Nasser to identify players and bring them in and reinforcements. We know injuries are always popping up here and there, and you never know. And with Mendes and Kimpembe kind of delayed in their return, I think there is some business that needs to be done. We'll have to see. I'm sure the rumors will be heating up here soon. You mentioned the Coupe de France. Excited about that. Playing the 6th-tier Revel team. We saw the video of their players, amateurs, right? They're celebrating to be able to go up against a team like PSG. So that'll be entertaining. And then we'll see on the draw who PSG draws in the next round. It'll be a lot to look forward to. But Jonathan, thank you so much. We've kept you too long here. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Always appreciate your insight. Thank you, everyone out there, to listening to this hopefully high quality podcast. Always appreciate your support. And lastly, happy holidays from everyone here at PSG Talk. All right, until next time. Bye for now.